Good morning, everyone, or whenever you're listening to this. Welcome back to Natural Nonsense. For the first time, there are three faces on the Zoom screen, which is very exciting. Starting with myself, of course. My name is Kyler. We got Andre 1K in the building. And our first guest to Natural Nonsense, a true honor. Welcome Joy to the mic.
Hello. I'm super excited about this. This is my first podcast, actually.
Hey.
Big deal for me.
Hey, it's a big deal for us too. Like first guest, first podcast for you. And I think we're gonna give the people a good show. There's a lot of knowledge on this podcast. Y'all gonna hear some stuff that y'all ain't never heard before. Y'all gonna use the dictionary a lot this episode, I feel.
Yeah. Get the dictionary out now or dictionary.com. Just have it on the side real quick. Now's the time to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like this would be one of those episodes where you have like, word of the day. It's gonna be like 27 words of the day.
I learned a new language even.
Exactly. And I think just to get it started, we just want to give Joy an opportunity to introduce herself. Tell us a little about who you are, what you do, why you do it. Like, let's just give the elevator pitch. This is your time to cook.
Okay. Well, good morning. My name is Joy. Most people know me by my married name, Joy Spears. I go by Microsama online. So how do I describe myself? I guess by trade, I am a laboratory technician in parasitology. I don't currently work in a lab, but I kind of flip-flop where like I'll work in a lab and then I'll stop and then I'll go back to a lab and then I'll stop. But I work with parasites, mostly, or my personal favorite are helminthic parasites. I forgot to mention these are animal parasites. I don't work on humans at all. But my favorite are helminthic parasites, which are the ones that turn into worms, So your nematodes, like your roundworm, hookworm, tapeworm, all the really fun stuff that you actually get to see eventually, the stuff that doesn't stay microbial forever. Those are my guys. Within that, I kind of have a passion for primate parasites. So the ones that infect non-human primates like monkeys and the great apes. So I am currently just kind of flip-flopping between working with parasites and working with primates. And I'm trying to find a way to marry those two interests in grad school. I'm also like neck deep in the middle of a pre-grad school journey right now. It's really frustrating, but really exciting. So I am trying to get into grad school, I think, for my PhD. Still not 100% sure. The jury's still out, but that's kind of where I'm being pushed into, the direction I'm being pushed into. It'll either be like a general biology track where I can just kind of focus where I want to focus, or it might be more like a behavioral ecology thing. Like the degree itself is called animal behavior, but within that you can kind of make it where, focus where you need to do. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking if I can swing that, then I would like to study behavioral ecology with a focus on primates. So how primates are transmitting different parasites between each other and between other species and things like that. With that, I also work with primates. I cannot name the zoo for reasons I just learned about, but after getting in trouble for posting on Twitter. But I am an assistant zookeeper at a zoo here in Arizona where I work with the primates. They don't have any great apes, so it's all lesser apes, like gibbons and baboons and things like that. And that's more of just like a behavioral enrichment and then like a animal husbandry kind of thing where I'm just there, just like, as a literal keeper, essentially. But yeah, that's what I'm doing. I come from an art background, so science is not new for me, but academically very new for me. I have avoided science in college like the plague. I have tried my hardest to not take any of that shit up until now. And it's kind of smacking me in the face a little bit because when you and Kyler, I know you probably know how this feels, but when you get to a certain point in your adult life and you're in school, you're like, okay, what am I doing? Why didn't I make these decisions when I was 18 years old? You know what I mean? So I am kind of stuck in that point now where I'm like, I could have had all this shit done. Like I could have been done by now. You know what I mean? I'm 28 and I have been in college nonstop for like 10 years, just on and off, on and off, on and off. yeah, like I said, I have 2 art degrees in studio art and visual and public art. I went to Cal State Monterey Bay, go Otters. um, but I always wanted to work with animals in some capacity. Even when I was a kid, I wanted to be a vet, and it just didn't really happen that way. I think you get like 17 and you start looking at the opposite sex, and you're like, oh, okay, like I'm getting attention from boys, I'm doing all this other stuff, I'm trying to be social, and then I started to figure out that I could draw really well, and I was like, okay, well, that's a more attractive profession. So if I want to stay cute and do something that I like, maybe I should pursue art. And that's kind of what happened. And then somewhere down the line, I was like, yeah, man, you should have just done what you said you were going to do, So yeah, now I'm here, still trying to figure it out. I'm not going to vet school. I decided on that about 6 months ago, but that was originally why I went back to school. And not for any particular reason other than I don't think being a veterinarian is necessarily how I can best apply my talents, to helping animals. I have a very eclectic, like, I am interested in so many things, you know what I mean? Like, and they don't connect. And that's one of the most frustrating things for me, is that I'm always trying to connect them. Like, okay, if I like this and I like this, then I can do this, you know what I mean? And it doesn't always work like that. It does not always work like that. So with vet school, I felt like I was trying too hard to put things together to make myself happy. It was like, okay, if you want to study primates, then you got to specialize in zoo medicine. But if you want to study parasites, then you got to specialize in microbiology. But I don't really care about microbes outside of parasites. You know what I mean? So, and then I started thinking like, oh, I can get a degree in microbiology, but parasites only stay microbial for like, as long as they're larvae, and then they're worms, and I don't necessarily care about bacteria, and I don't care about fungi, and all the other things that are mostly within that realm. So I was just kind of like, okay, well, if I want to study parasites and I want to see the worms, like I want to see the actual worms, then you can't really be a vet. Like you can, but that would be like the least of what you're doing as a vet, you know what I mean? So I was like, okay, well, if I do research, then I can pretty much do whatever I want. So
yeah,
that's why I'm here. So that's what I'm doing, I think. We'll see.
I'm already impressed.
Yeah, check back with me in 6 months and I might be saying I'm doing something completely different, but we'll see.
And I just wanted to say, like, we got all the time in the world to figure all this stuff out. Like, I know age is important, but maturity definitely don't come with age. And it sounds like you got a lot more of a mature stance than a lot of people that is like, 40, 50 and still running around like a little kid, like in terms of what they want to do. Yeah. And you know what I'm saying? So definitely sending you energy on your journey.
Thank you. Well, I'm enjoying it. I like to lead with the complaints sometimes, that it's frustrating and it's hard, and imposter syndrome is kicking my ass all the time. But I honestly would never imagine not doing what I'm doing, Even when I don't know what I'm doing, I'm like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, And one of the things that I take comfort in is that I have an ability like no one I've ever met to just figure it out in the moment, So if I'm like, okay, well, I'm not really sure about this, but I'm gonna just go to my first day at whatever this new job is. And if I like it, then I like it. And if I don't, then I don't. And on that first day, I will just decide that, okay, I like it. You know what I mean? And now I'm going to apply myself, and now I'm going to learn everything that I can learn about this one thing so that I can make it so that I enjoy doing it. And I think that's kind of how I've navigated this a little bit, especially because I've been flip-flopping around so much, is that I kind of just have to find a liking for it and find a passion for it. And that in itself is what I'm passionate about. It's just like collecting as many badges. I'm trying to, you know what I mean? It's like Pokemon. I'm just trying to catch all of them. Like,
Ash catch them with it.
Gotta catch them all.
But yeah, so I'm having fun. I'm enjoying it.
And I think that's what matters, like the having fun piece. Like just thinking, like before we started recording, we had this whole dialogue about how Joy and I met each other and whatnot, and just knowing you for so long and just seeing the evolution of you, like every time I see Joy tweet, an Instagram post, there's some type of evolution, like whether it's a hair journey, cosplay. Like
Oh,
from my timeline standpoint, she's the queen of mommy Twitter. Like she be going in on the mamas of Twitter. It's a joy, like it's a joy, pun intended, to follow Joy on Twitter.
thank you. That means a lot. Thank you.
But literally, like from the what you have white hair. Did you have green hair at one point?
Twice, yeah. 3 times.
Twice.
Yeah.
All the hairstyles. This is my first time seeing Joy bald. Like
This is so new for me. Can I just say, just really quick? I never considered having, like, I was always one of those people that whenever other people were like, other women were like, I want to shave my head, I'm like, oh, do it, do it, do it, you know. And I'm in the back of my mind when I'm saying that, I'm like, yeah, but I'm never gonna do that shit, you know, because I'm never gonna do that, you know. And I had locks for 5 years and I was absolutely in love with my locks. Like I didn't even think I would do that when I did it, you know. But that was one of those things where I was like, if I really want to embrace my hair in the way that I need to, coming from bleaching it and dyeing it and straightening it and wearing weaves all the time, you know, I was like, I'm just gonna enjoy my hair for what it looks like and just see where it takes me. And the locks was a really fun journey. I'm really sad to see them go actually, but it was definitely time. Not for any particular reason other than I do so much damage to my hair just doing whatever I want to do. And that's kind of just been the mentality that I always have, you know, with that kind of thing. It's just like, fuck it, just do it, just cut it, just dye it, just bleach it. You know, what's the worst that's gonna happen? It falls out. It fell out. It didn't fall out. It didn't fall out. My hair didn't fall out, but
make sure you put that on record.
Yeah, like I did not shave my head because I had to, but it was just at that point where I was like, I have no emotional connection to this dead hair anymore. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like it's just there. So I cut it off, and that's just kind of how that's what I decided. And I think I'm happy with it. I'm still in that kind of transitional stage where you do something new and you're like, I don't know if I like this yet, you know, but I think I like it. I think I'm happy with it. So we'll see. If I pop up with a wig in 2 weeks, then you know what happened.
Yeah. That's why there's a bunch of options on the table.
There's always options, especially when you ain't got no hair.
Yeah, that just opens up so many more options.
Yeah.
But I think the listeners get to know a lot about you through your introduction. One thing I want to make sure we touch on before we transition to the main topic. This is Natural Nonsense. We talk a lot about animals on this podcast. Andre and I have mentioned in earlier episodes our favorite animals. Andre is a fan of the honey badger. I'm a wolf guy. So Joy, let the folks know, what's your favorite animal and why?
Ooh, so off the top of my head, without even thinking about it, I would say the Siamang gibbon. They are the largest of the lesser apes, the largest of the gibbon family, and most of the time they're all Black. They are just really smart animals. They're just like incredible animals, you know. They have this incredible call that is unlike anything I've ever heard before. And me being the type of person I am, I live for chaotic noises. Just like when you hear something and you're like, what the fuck was that? You know what I mean? That's how gibbons are. That's how Siamangs are. So, and you know, I wish I might have to pull it up on my phone or something just to play it for y'all. But it's like, or y'all can look it up after we record and you'll know what I'm talking about. But it's just like this just haunting, piercing, echoing sound, you know, and they do it together usually in duets. It's usually like a communication thing, you know. It's like when one joins in, every gibbon like within 100-mile radius is like, oh, that's what we're doing. Okay, cool, me too. You know what I mean? And so then they just start together, and it's like this chorus, and it's incredible to hear. You know, when my first day at the zoo last week, they were kind of giving me a tour around, and they took me near the gibbons, and they have a bunch of different gibbons, but they had this one area that had 2 Siamangs and then like maybe 10 other types of gibbon, you know, and they were all scattered throughout. But it was first thing in the morning, it was like 9 o'clock in the morning, and they knew that food was coming. So they were all just like ready and, you know, ready to listen. So the Siamangs immediately started with this like hooting, they call it hooting, I think. But it's like a ooh, 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 you know, and
That's pretty good.
There are some people who can do a Siamang call and it's like you're not even a human, you know what I mean? But they started doing it, and every gibbon like in the zoo was like, okay, cool, let me do it too. So the whole
It's time to turn up.
yeah, so the whole zoo was just like vibrating with this noise, you know what I mean? And it was like, it almost made me cry because it was just so powerful. You know, it was like one of those sounds that, like, you ever hear something that's so like loud is not the word I'm trying to use, but it's loud, but it's also just like like it penetrates, you know what I mean? And it
Like
felt,
piercing.
yeah,
Yeah,
you know,
like
and
when
it
a lion roars.
exactly, or like when somebody's in danger and they scream in a really particular way, and you're
Hmm.
like, that scream affected me more than whatever danger they're in. You know what I mean? It was like that. It was like what I imagine people feel like when they think that God is talking to them, and when they hear God's voice and they're just like, oh, you know what I mean? Like shook to your core. That's what it feels like to hear gibbons calling, especially first thing in the morning. It's amazing. So for that alone, they're my favorite animal, hands down. They're also really smart, really funny. They are like children. You know, watching gibbons interact is like watching my kids interact. You know what I mean? It's like
Hmm.
the problem solving, like the mischief. They have tantrums like kids. They do it all. We are primates. Like we're primates, hands down. But yeah,
So you're learning so much on just first part of the podcast already.
I know.
This is why Joy had to be the first guest. I think I'm on a Zoom call with the two nerdiest people that I am friends with. And I mean that as the biggest of compliments, but y'all are the two nerdiest people I know.
Oh
thank you.
wow, thanks.
That's an honor.
I know because I mean, there's been a lot that you've met, so the fact that I'm on the short list is amazing.
Andre, you're at the top of the list. What you mean?
That's wild. That's wild.
Like, I don't know. And I think that's why I really wanted to have Joy on the podcast. I feel like there would just be a natural synergy because y'all both know way too much about animals and stuff like that. Y'all both some anime heads. Like, y'all know y'all anime stuff. Like, I just feel like the synergy would be there. We already experiencing it so far.
Cool. With it.
But let's go ahead and transition to kind of the main meat of our conversation this morning. The episode title, Parasitic Behavior. As Joy knows so much about parasites, we wanted to talk about some of that knowledge, but as well as connected to how people can be very, very parasitic in nature. But I think we should start with the nerd out section, kind of let the nerds cook a little bit. So Andre, I'm actually pass it over to you to kind of start this dialogue about different forms of parasites and how this appears in nature. And then we can hear some of Joy's knowledge and just have a conversation from there.
Yeah, so I think like when I listed these words out, I kind of took it from I guess like I guess it's called ecological, but just like what you can see from animal behavior from each other. And so like just looking what symbiosis is, and symbiosis for the listeners is basically like in a short way the interaction between two different species in their given like environment, and like how do they interact with each other. And so there's usually like four ways, there's other ways too, but there's usually four ways that they can interact. So there's mutualism, um, commensalism, parasitism, and then competition. And so for mutualism, it's stuff that's like mutually beneficial. So like there's a bird species, it's called an oxpecker. And I don't know if anybody's ever seen a documentary, but there's these tiny little birds that will be on top of like a hippo or like a wildebeest or a zebra maybe. And what they do is they kind of like pick off the little, like if it's little, I don't know, little bugs or little fleas or little flies that land on the larger animal that they can't really reach. You know what I'm saying? It ain't like if you a bovine hooved animal, it's kind of hard to like get to the back of your neck. You know what I mean? You can't really be using like they don't have thumbs either. So like they can't really grab no utensil and kind of scratch. So I could only imagine if I was like a giant hippo and I'm itching somewhere, like what would I do? Honestly, like I would just be stressed. Like it literally does add to the stress, like of the animal. Like it can
That's
lead
why
to
they
like
take off running sometimes for that reason.
and it can lead to like pink eye and like other diseases being like spread. You know what I'm saying? It can lead to a lot of different stuff just from having too many flies around. And then when it comes to commensalism, that's like where it's one-sided. So an example of that is kind of how tree frogs, they use different leaves of different plants for protection. So in that scenario, only the frog technically benefits, but it's not like the plant is harmed. So like the leaf is gonna be there regardless. The tree frog can duck in there, and it's not like, the plant is unaware. It's just kind of, they kind of chilling. You know what I'm saying? It's not like too bad. And then when it gets into parasitism, it's when one species lives on or in a host species. So an example of this is like ticks. So like if there's, I grew up in the country in North Carolina, so it's something that's really been a big part of my upbringing of just knowing what a tick is and how it can be really bad. That's how really like dangerous diseases can be passed. I know
Yeah.
there's this one with a tick where like it can make you like allergic to meat or something like that. Like if you get a certain
Oh
tick,
shit.
like a certain tick bite with a certain pathogen in it, it can make you start like suddenly having an allergy to a certain kind of meat now. So it's things like that that can happen with ticks. And then on the competition level, there's the organisms that compete for resources. And so the basic ones, like from Lion King, hyenas and lions, like they compete for each other for different resources. And so they kind of have that relationship. And so that's kind of like, I guess, on the like what we can see on a larger scale of the relationship. And so I'll pass it to Joy to kind of talk about on the micro level, kind of what that looks like.
Yeah. So with parasitism, like you said, it's a type of symbiotic relationship, and symbiotic always kind of has this connotation that it's beneficial for all. When we think of symbiosis, we think of mutualism a lot of the time, but parasitism is a form of symbiosis because somebody's benefiting, just not everybody. And it's different from commensalism because the host species is not unbothered, they're actually being hurt, by the parasite. And a lot of time, it's hard to talk about parasites and immediately assign a negative connotation to them because they are parasites, right? They are there to take from the host or, whatever living body they're a part of, but they aren't necessarily inherently a bad like a bad entity themselves, you know what I mean? And bad is
Mhm.
like not a scientific word to you know what I mean? But it's kind of one of those things where if we did not, and by we I mean humans, if we did not evolve to this level without interaction from parasites, our immune systems would be completely different. The things
Mhm.
that we can handle and survive now are because of parasites. Not just parasites, it's a lot of bacteria work too, but parasites kind of get in there. And so the whole deal with parasites is that their whole mission in life, in the larger scheme of things, is to constantly pick the biological lock, right? So they are like the supervillain in the movie who's in the lab just constantly trying to figure out, how can I get in? How can I, today's going to be the day, and they're really good at it. They are the best at it. And, especially helminths, they just will completely get in there. And by in there, I mean into the host body. And their whole purpose is to get in and get out, or get in and stay in, depending on the parasite. But
Mhm.
they're going to get in. You know what I mean? They will always make it in there one way or another, even if they have to change their evolution, their biology to figure out another way in, you know what I mean? And a lot of parasites, I think, oh, I just lost my train of thought, I'm sorry. A lot of parasites do this thing where so let's say you're a pig, right? And that's the target host species,
Mhm.
maybe we're talking about tapeworm or something. And if they want to complete their life cycle, they need to find their way into the digestive tract of a pig, right? That's the whole goal, is to make it to the pig's digestive tract. But how are you as a parasite going to get there unless a pig directly consumes you, right? So there's this thing called the oral fecal route, which is essentially the route. It's the method of transmission of most parasitic or most gastrointestinal pathogens, right? And it's literally what it sounds like. It is the direct transmission from, and it's really the opposite, it's really the fecal oral route, if you really want to be technical, because it's going from butt to mouth, ironically. But so a lot of parasites do this thing where they will find other species, intermediate species, to kind of work their way into and around, because they know that those species will make it into the targeted host species. You know what I mean? So for example, pigs, one of the parasites that infects pigs that also infects us and a lot of other animals are tapeworm, right? Tania. And Tania is incredible because they are one of the tapeworm. They're probably the ones that when you think of tapeworm and you think of that long flat thing that's like 36 feet long, that's a tapeworm, that's Tania, you know what I mean? And they can get in and stay in and just completely mess somebody's life up, right? But they do this thing where they will essentially, let's say they're in the digestive tract of a pig, right? They reproduce, they have all their eggs, those eggs get passed out into the feces. That's one of my jobs as a lab tech, is to take that feces and read it under a microscope and identify that that's what the parasite is that we're looking at. But they make their way into the feces. Pig, what happens to pig shit? It goes all into the ground, right? Gets consumed by other animals, maybe even the pigs themselves, because pigs are nasty like that.
Not pigs catching a stray on this podcast.
Listen, I love
hey,
pigs.
the three little pigs is somewhere like, hey.
Like, I don't but I like to use pigs as an example because they're one of those universal species that just, no matter where they are in the world, they're doing some nasty shit. Like, that they are in the middle of some of the nastiest interactions between animals.
Porky Pig is gonna cancel us.
And that's how parasites like tapeworm become so powerful, right? Is because they have this species like pigs who are always going to be where the shit is. They're always going to be where the nastiest of things are, where the parasites thrive, and then they can be ingested, and then they can complete their life cycle. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And if they don't go straight from pig to pig, then they'll go from pig to cow to human to frog to bird back to pig. You know what I mean? And it just will happen like that in a circle of life, essentially. But it's incredible to kind of track those pathways. And that's one of the things that's really fun about parasitism, because parasites will always have a path. They will always have a route into wherever they're trying to get, no matter what. And if you as a species over hundreds of thousands of years evolve to, the whole point of evolution is to constantly get better, right? Is to level up. But if you as a host species have, and I don't mean like an individual, but just as an evolutionary concept, if you as a host species have evolved to heighten your defense to a specific type of parasite, that parasite's whole job in life, like in the universe, is to get back in there, is to figure it out. You lock me out and I'm gonna just break the door down. You know what I mean? And that's what they do. That's what tapeworm does. That's what roundworm does. Hookworm, we can talk about that in a minute. But hookworm is another beast that will just do whatever the fuck they want to do, get into whoever they want to get into, and cause all kind of trouble, just destroy species populations, because they just deplete. It's like, I hate to use this example because I'm a mom, but it's like being pregnant, where you have something inside of you that their whole purpose is to grow and change and get bigger and get stronger. So they will just pull every resource that they can get out of you, every bit of energy, every vitamin, every mineral that they can get, and then get out. No parasite wants to stay there forever, unless there are a few that do. But for the most part, they want to get in, they want to reproduce, and they want to get out. You know what I mean? And they will destroy you in the process. And it's not pretty. It's not pretty at all, but it's pretty fun to watch if you're in a controlled environment like a laboratory.
Sure. I think something that you started talking about that was key is the host behavior and how that goes into the symbiosis and stuff. Because if the pig was like, and it's not like to victim blame the pig, but just like in its natural, like,
Yeah.
yeah, in its natural behaviors, that tends to be how they are more susceptible to those specific parasites. And so um, I think like when we look at how that relates to just parasitic behavior overall, like in just how people interact, um, it's just something to like keep in mind. You know what I'm saying? Like how can a host behavior kind of tend itself to leading to mutualism or commensalism or parasitism? Because like if for the oxpecker's sake, if the large animals, like as soon as they landed on the backs or whatever, the large animals started beefing with the birds and trying to fight them and trying to get them away, it wouldn't really work out. Like they kind of gotta chill and let the bird cook. You know what I'm saying? So I think like that's something that's really key in the situation, is just like where does the host behavior come in, and then how does the natural just like DNA code instructions from the parasite interact with each other for our natural environment? Because like you said, it's not that any of these things are good, bad, or like morally anywhere. It's just, hey, this is our natural world, and this is a way for those ecosystems to create balance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's like as a host, and then we could kind of use this to talk about human interactions too. But as a host, it's like, what are you doing to create a hospitable environment for a parasite? You know what I mean? What is it about your behavior and your interactions that is making it so that parasites can live and thrive with you? You know what I mean? And that's something that you see with pretty much any animal. Most of the parasites that I work with, ironically, are not primate parasites. They're actually canine parasites, because those are the ones that are the most readily available. You have the most samples for that. But things like hookworm and roundworm with dogs just gets passed around like a blunt. You know what I mean? Because dogs in their natural behavior are social animals,
Not the parasites being passed like a backwood. Hold
community backwoods just get handed around and wet down and passed around. But it's in the host, in this case dogs, natural behavior to interact with each other. You know what I mean? They create an environment that makes it really easy for parasites to just do what they want to do, because dogs are going to always find other dogs. You know what I mean? A dog is never going to go out of their way, unless they, have some kind of trauma, to not be around other dogs, even dogs they don't like. You know what I mean? They're going to sniff poop. They're going to eat it. They're going to get in somebody's butt. They're going to go in the trash. They're going to find the other dogs and the other animals no matter what. And because of that, dogs will always be a target for parasites like that. You know what I mean? And the parasites know that. They don't have minds and brains and things, but instinctually they know that, right? They know that this particular species is always going to create an environment that allows me to take what I need and fuck them up in the process maybe, and then get to the next one. You know what I mean? And pass my 1,000 babies off to the next one, and then another dog will come along, and and one animal can hold thousands of parasites. Thousands. You know what I mean? We're not talking about one long tapeworm. We're talking about, I think probably the largest number, and this is an estimate because it wasn't able to be counted, but in a canine sample, it was Toxicara, so it was a roundworm, species of roundworm. So if you're diagnosing a parasite infection, usually they will say, so your field of view in a microscope is everything that you can see within a particular field, right, in your circle. So they say to diagnose a parasite infection as an infection, like an active infection, you need to see like 3 or 4 ova, which are eggs, in that field of view, right? Even no matter if they're clumped together, spread out, as long as you see 3 or 4 in any given circle, that's an active infection. This dog had 1,000, like the entire, I have a photo, I don't know how well I can show you through the screen, but literally like in the entire sample, probably 2,000 or 3,000. eggs just
Whoa.
layered on top of each other. You know what I mean? So, and that's one dog. That's one dog. So, and that's just one piece of a sample, not even the whole sample. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because if you think of how big a bowel movement is, you know, in the average dog, and then I take maybe 5 milliliters of that. Not even, I take a scoop of that, put it in a tube and mix it with 5 milliliters of zinc and then read that. And I get 3,000 eggs. You know what I mean? So you can kind of guess the depth with which this parasite was in, you know, in this animal. It was really sad actually, because to get like that, they probably had been sick for months, you know, for months and months and months. And they probably, you know, my guess, and you never really know when you work in parasitology because it's different from working in like a clinical aspect. I used to be a vet tech, so I kind of did both. You know, I worked for 2 companies that were under the same parent umbrella, essentially. So I would get to see these dogs in the clinic and then go home at night and then go to my next job and see their samples, you know. But you kind of just have to assume that dog was probably like a junkyard dog or a stray, you know, who had just been doing their own thing for months and months. But yeah, they had like a good couple of thousand parasites in one animal, you know, and they wouldn't have all made it, obviously,
Right.
but you know, just to show you,
percentage wise, yeah,
yeah,
enough would have.
So just to give you an idea of how deep they roll and how easily they can get what they need from a host, because they don't want to kill you. They want you to stay alive so they can keep taking resources from you, but they will take everything from you in the process. But yeah,
that was a bar.
Yeah, that was a bar.
They won't kill you.
Yeah, I'm gonna take that bar as a segue because when it comes to like they won't kill you because they want you to survive. We talked a little bit about parasitic behavior. I think folks learned a lot. I mean, I was sitting here just absorbing knowledge from y'all. Y'all are so cool. But I do want to transition us to talk about where this shows up in human to human interactions too. So I think it was sometime last month I shared this Instagram post on my story. The quote went something along the lines of like people who love your energy so much that they start draining it from you. And I think that's a clear parallel to when we're talking about parasites and parasitic behavior and all these different relationships between parasites and hosts. I just want us to kind of open up a dialogue about like times where we feel like people, because, oh, wow, you have such great energy. And then they just start injecting or taking it from you, like absorbing it out of you. So where has this showed up for y'all? Like where people love your energy, they love how you are, and they love it so much that they just start taking it all away from you to where every time you see them, they're like, I don't know if I got the energy for you today.
I mean, as a woman and as a Black woman.
You can say less there. I think that's all you gotta say.
Look, period. End of sentence.
Just that's it. I'm a Black woman, so but yeah, you know, I see that shit in every facet of my life, everywhere, everybody, you know what I mean? Not to get really bleak and you know, serious, but as a Black woman, that's just kind of what happens to you, is that you were raised for fodder. I always like to say, like, you are kind of just created to be consumed, you know, in whatever degree that takes, you know, but people consume you, people take from you, people need you all the time, you know, and I don't mean need in the literal sense, like my kids need me, but they need me, you know. I joke that my kids are parasites sometimes because they are, you know. They need me and they will take from me, and they don't want to kill me, but they will take everything they got from me in the process, you know. But no, like actual, you know, parasitic relationships, I think I see all the time, you know, in failed relationships, in failed friendships, you know, there are people who gravitate toward, and I'm trying not to be really specific by myself because I don't want anybody who's listening to feel called out. But, you know, I do have relationships with, or I have had relationships with people where, you know, there will always be this kind of energy like, oh, you know, you have so much to give. You have so much, you have so much to give. can I have some? I need you, you know what I mean? And being the type of person that I am, I'm always, I'm almost to a fault trying to people please and give and help and provide resources and educate people. And, it feels really good when you can get it done, but it also feels really shitty when you can't, because then everybody kind of looks at you like, well, why aren't you showing up for me right now? And it's like, I literally cannot, you know what I mean? Like it's not in me to give anymore. And I think what makes it parasitic behavior is when you are not able to give, and people don't realize that, and they still need to take and they need more, and it's really hard to get out of situations like that, because you as the person being parasitized, don't always know that you're being drained in that way until you don't have anything, until it's gone. But yeah, as a Black woman, I'd say that shit happens everywhere, every day, all the time, not every interaction, but most interaction,
I'm about to say damn near.
Yeah, like you just come to expect to be consumed in certain ways. And as a young person and as a millennial, I feel like I've been conditioned to just be okay with it, as long as it's not directly impactful to like my mental health, then I'm just am going to be consumed, and that just is what it, you know what I mean? And maybe that's not the greatest thing and the greatest mentality to have. I'm not sure. That's just kind of how I've been moving all this time, I'm just here for, what am I trying to say? I am always just here for, like, if I got it and you need it, it's yours. You know what I mean? And like, without question. And yeah, sometimes it helps, sometimes it hurts. But
I feel that.
Yeah.
Kyler, how is this showing up for you?
I think the main way that comes to mind is when it comes to how people read my energy, because as y'all know, I'm much more of an introverted, like calm, quiet presence, but my energy is always felt and my presence is felt whenever I'm in spaces. And people love that. Like I'm around a lot of people who just talk, and they're around people who talk, and they don't have people that intentionally listen. And so I feel like because I am so easily able to create that space for people, they always want to hit me up to listen to some shit. Like, and it's like, cool, I will hear you out. Everyone deserves to get heard out, but like, damn, can you check in on how my side of relationship is going for a little bit? Because literally it was like
in 12 hours. Did you know that?
Yeah, precisely. Because it was like a couple weeks ago, I got hit up by like 4 different people on some negative shit that they was complaining about. And it's like, cool, but like I got a midterm next week. Like I'm tired already.
I remember reading your tweets during what was it, like I think it was a graduation ceremony that you recorded.
That was on the Twitter circle.
Oh my god. And it was just like a series of tweets, just like, yo, what the fuck is going on? I need help. Nobody's helping me. Everybody's asking me for shit. Like it's just never ending. And I was just like, ooh man, I feel that. Feel it.
Yeah, exactly. Because I feel like when people see you as Superman, when they see you as this person who is able to like bear a lot of weight or help a lot of people out, they just see that as default. Like they see you as that superhero. They see you as Batman, never Bruce Wayne. And it's like I've written poems about it and stuff like that, where it's like, yeah, like I'm that guy. I can be a superhero. Like I am capable of a lot of this stuff, but at the same time, I can't always give. And I think a lot of that comes back to like people really, and this will be a whole other podcast episode, so I won't go too far in details, but people actually understanding who you are as a person and like validating like who you are, how you get energy, how you present yourself. Because I think one of the ways it comes up is people know that I'm more quiet, introverted, not really a people person, but they still want me to be at all the loud peoply functions. They're like, oh, do you want to go to this? I'm like, no, that doesn't sound like anything I would ever want to go to.
Yeah. No, I don't want to go.
Yeah, like not at all. I would much rather be here. And when you start to protect that energy, then all of a sudden you just asshole. Like then it's like, oh dang, you don't care about me. Andre and I were talking about this randomly last week, but there'll be times in college where I have to set boundaries, which excuse me for setting boundaries. Like, how dare I? But it would be like, oh, Kyler, can you do this? Because I was one of the only people, like our first couple years, who had a car on campus. People want to go here. People want to go to the beauty supply. People want to go to Wingstop. And I'm like, the Lakers come on at 7:30.
Yeah, like I have
Nah. Yeah, and
my
I told
priorities.
yeah, and I told Kyler, I was like, the one thing, like not just one thing, but one of the things that I admired the most about him was how he never budged, ever, ever. And this is Robert Sacre Lakers. This is this is
When we
Wesley
was
Johnson.
ass.
This is Wesley Johnson and them starting. And he was like, nah, I'm watching this and I'm going home. And that is what I will be doing for the next 2 hours until this game is over. You can have your sob story, but you might have wanted to plan ahead a little bit and acknowledge my needs before bringing this up. You know what I'm saying? And, I think that was something I always just really admired about Kyler for real.
Yeah, that's inspiring, actually. I need a little bit of that, actually. I don't really watch basketball like that. Don't let my husband hear that, but he thinks I'm a fan. But
we won't tell.
I cosplay as a basketball fan for my husband's sake.
Hey, it's just us here. Nobody else is listening.
But I do like that energy, of like, listen, I would love to be here for you. I would love to help you, and I will when I'm able to. But I really need to get home and watch this game. Like I'm trying to think of something that I have like an equivalent to that that I would want to set a boundary like that for. But that you just gave me something to think about. Actually, I'm gonna need to go do some work and think about that because I feel like I could use that.
Yeah, I think that's the homework for our listeners for this episode is like, think about those non-negotiables. Like, what do you need to do to keep your energy alive? Like, what do you need to do to recuperate? Maybe it's you need an hour to read a book every day. Maybe you just need to shut up and listen to some music for a while. But I think we're all deserving time, especially like nowadays, just with how capitalism, and we could talk about parasitic behaviors with capitalism for hours, but just how that drains so much from us on a day-to-day, where it's like, yeah, like you have every right to need to take 2 hours to be you, because at the end of the day, who else is going to be there but you? Like, you can't just exert all your energy for everyone else and then just leave you out to dry. So definitely like setting those boundaries is so important.
Yeah. And I think I've started practicing that a little bit, just like in my home life. I'm a stay-at-home mom right now, primarily. Like I said, I do kind of flip-flop between where I'll go have a job and then I'll stop working and but it's mostly just for my own like enrichment, not to make myself sound like a caged animal by using the word enrichment, but it's just kind of one of those, especially because of the pandemic, and I live in Arizona, so it's hot as fuck all the time, right? Like no one wants to be outside. We want to be in the house, But when you're a stay-at-home mom and you have 2 small toddlers, my oldest is 3 and my youngest will be 2 in October. So like I'm right in the the thick of mommyhood, you know what I mean? So I do have those moments where, I will have to, and me and my husband do this thing where we'll just check in with each other. We call it turtle, but it's like, because he works overnight. So sometimes we'll be texting in the middle of the night. But he, we'll text each other and just send 3 turtle emojis. And then that means, to each other, that's like our code for like, I'm either about to go into a really long essay about my feelings right now, and I just want to know if you have the space to hear that, but it's not an emergency. The turtle means I'm moving slow because it's not an emergency. That's what it means. But so we'll do that, right? And in those conversations, we'll kind of come up with these like systems that'll kind of help keep both our heads on straight. So for a little while we were doing this thing where we had like a mommy day and a daddy day, where regardless of what your work schedule was throughout the week, you pick a day and we will try to commit to that same day every week where it is just yours. You get to do whatever you need to do. You get to hide in the closet all day if you need to do that, like
hide all the snacks with you.
You know what I mean? Like you get to do whatever you need, and I will try to keep my needs from you to a minimum. Obviously it's hard when you have kids because like everybody needs you no matter what. But we try to set it up at least so that on mommy days, nobody's asking me for shit. You know what I mean? Don't ask me to cook. Don't ask me where your socks are. I don't know. I don't care. I don't work here. You know what I mean? I just, you know.
Ma'am, this is a Wendy's.
Yeah, this is a Wendy's. But like, you know how you ever accidentally been in Target with some khakis on, and they're like, "Do you work here?" You know, and you're like, "No, I don't."
No, I actually have just been in Target and people just thought I worked there. I don't, and not even with khakis.
The principle of you being black, they're like, "Do you work here?"
Wait, I need to tell a story real quick. Sorry to cut you off, Joy, because this literally happened. This happened yesterday. I was at this sports store in San Diego, which is very important. I had on a Dodgers jersey similar to this one, Los Angeles Dodgers. I'm looking at Dodger stuff in the store. This dude walks up to me and is like, "Oh, are these jerseys y'all have for sale real?" I'm like, bro, I don't know.
Like, let me know when you find out, because I don't know either.
Yeah. And he's like, "Oh, you don't work here?" I'm like, obviously, like, because this is a Los Angeles Dodgers shirt. We're in San Diego. If I did work here, I'd have on something San Diego Padres.
Yeah.
Like, just it's that's
just for
how
the
it
sake
works.
of it.
Yeah, like, but I'm walking around in this LA Dodgers shirt, obviously looking at our merchandise, and you think, no, I don't work here. I'm sorry. But yes, it has happened in Target too. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, no, but that's how it is. You know what I mean? Where it's like, you know, we will designate these days, and we're like, listen, don't ask me for shit. I don't know. I don't work here. You know, I'm not here. I'm not even here. Or just pretend I'm not at home. You know what I mean? If I decide to stay at home, most of my days I actually will go to the zoo and volunteer, just because I need to get out of the house sometimes. But you know, on his days, he'll just go hide in the room, hide in, or on our balcony, you know, smoke a blunt and just pretend like nobody else is here. You know, and it was really hard in the beginning, you know, because as a stay-at-home mom, you kind of feel really isolated a lot of the time, especially in the middle of a pandemic. So you're kind of like, okay, well, what about me? You know, so when we would do those days, sometimes on his day, I would get a little bit salty. I'd be like, oh, this is just more work for me on top of all the work I already have to do. You know what I mean? But it also felt like that for him, you know, because I don't work. You know, he works 7 days a week, overnight, every single night. You know what I mean? So anytime that he is at home, he is either in parent mode or he's in recovery mode. And that's just the two mode, you know what I mean? No matter what, he still has to go to work. So in those days, I kind of have to realize, you know, like, yeah, he's still a human being. He still has to put his sword down and, like, you know, relax and recover, you know, sometimes. So I, you know, and those mommy and daddy days were kind of my idea, as a way to circumvent burnout or to put it off as much as we could, you know. And it sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, you know. We always check in with each other at the end of those days and be like, so how do you feel, you know? And most of the time we're like, yeah, I'm still tired, you know. But you still feel like you got enough out of that day, just not being asked for anything or not being needed in several hours, that it is at least a little bit of a treat, you know. But yeah, that's kind of been my anti-parasitic medication for a while. It's just to isolate myself for like 8 hours when I can, you know, go to the zoo or go outside, you know, whatever it needs to be done. But yeah.
I love that so much. That turtle, I wrote that down because I think that's genius. But Andre, I want you to go ahead and cook for a little bit. I know people be draining your energy sometimes. So how do they be draining you?
So something that I noticed is that, like, I guess Kyler noticed it more because we live together, but there's this like external world where I will operate with people, and they would see like, oh, Andre's the one that's the facilitator. He's bringing everybody together. He's, you know, planning the thing. He set the logistics. He's individually texting everybody, making sure they got the information. Like, I'm going above and beyond to be that person. So then people tend to take a back seat of what they could do to add to the scenario. So like, for example, I was an RA in college, and we did this activity of like, all the RAs in the room were like, okay, what's your role on the car or something? So like, who's the tires, or who's the steering wheel, who's the engine, who's the windows? And 75% of the room said I was the gas.
Damn.
Sheesh.
The gas?
I was the gasoline for the whole me?
Was it
Damn.
a hybrid car at least?
No, this was a
Just
good
get
old
used to
fashioned
the
like
rain.
Hummer
family
H2?
Hummer
Oh
H2.
my
You
God.
feel me? And nobody really took a second to be like, how would that be draining for this one person to have to be the gas for this 20 some odd group of this community of people that's supposed to also be putting energy in, putting fuel in. And I feel like a lot of times people see me as a like almost like a nuclear reactor of like, oh, Andre got it, or like, oh,
You're just
how many
like,
times Kyler people just would call me random hours. I have this problem and I don't know how to solve it. And like, oh, Andre knows what to do. So let me call him. And then I'm stopping everything I got to do or wherever I was at that day. Hey, forget if I was anxious or depressed that day. Oh, well, somebody needs, and I think for me, like it really started to come up like when I started transitioning out of college. It was like I was starting to graduate, like, and I ran out of fuel. Like it was 3 weeks before graduation. I wanted to fly home. I wanted to go back to North Carolina, and people were like, "Ha, you're not serious. It's only 3 weeks left of your whole college experience." And I'm like, and I'm out of gas.
I'm
I'm
done.
done.
I don't have it.
I'm done. I don't have it to go. I don't have it to go to any classes for the next 3 weeks. I don't have it to talk to nobody. I don't have it to be patient. And that's where I think I definitely get the most draining energy is with my patience because I'm an Aries already. So it's already a limited supply of patience. Like it's already limited. So
already
when I do have the patience, it's like, oh, let me try Andre so much that he has to use all his patience just for me today. And then also has to keep patience for all of the just natural parts that just happen in the day. And I think that's where I start to get drained because hell, life happens.
Yeah.
Like, okay, if they randomly is like I don't know, I gotta pay to get something fixed, like something broke. I don't know, like something broke with the car. I gotta get the oil change or something randomly happens. I gotta just do that. That's life. You know, that's my responsibility as an adult. But I think a lot of times it's not seen how I actually have to recover or like, yes, I'm very extroverted in some ways, but I get drained by being around a lot of people that just want from me or want me to speak or want me to say stuff like we would have protests on campus or we would have like town halls or something like that. And it's been actively happen where, yo, folks with PhDs and decades of experience, I'm kind of trying to tuck myself and be a part of the group and people grabbing the mic and being like, hey Andre,
I like
we have you usually is the person that usually has some great things to say on this another day of continued black violence and continued white supremacy. Do you have any more that you want to add? We would love to hear from you. And the last time that happened, I had to say, I was like, man,
nigga, no, I don't have nothing
go
to say.
back and look at the tape. I
Yeah.
have said the same things. Like, it's pretty clear at this point. Like, I mean, it might soothe you right now to hear my voice. Maybe that's what's going on. Or maybe it might be easier because maybe I read a couple more books. I don't know. But I'm still a person and I don't have more to add to this. We have been talking about the same systemic issues at this point, the better part of 100 years for the same problems. And honestly, I know I'm a smart person and I'm very like intelligent and stuff, but there are plenty of people who have written great books that are well more knowledgeable than I am that we could refer to and include as a part of the subject instead of it coming just from Andre to be this person to do all this effort and work all the time. And so I think over time, like just from taking the cue from Kyler, like I had to start being more of a regenerative person. Like, oh, Andre, we all going out to this bar tonight. We need your energy. People would straight up tell me the party wouldn't start until I got there. Like, man,
And
I
we're
was here
serious.
and we're
Guess we're not having
serious.
a party then. Shit.
Yeah, like,
Going home.
oh man, thank goodness you came, Andre, because I was here for 45. And it's like, why aren't you fun? Why
Yeah,
aren't
like,
you lit?
where's your party at? You know?
And why does it depend on me? And there's
But
dozens of people here.
Like, are y'all paying me to be here since
Right.
exactly. That's what I want to bring up, because I'm happy you mentioned the parties, because it was something I wrote down to bring up too, because I think that Andre, like the regenerative behavior, like you trying to go to the party and turn up, but you want to come in and like just turn up like a regular party. We go into a party. If the party started, then they're like, oh, like Andre's here. Let's form a circle around Andre and watch him dance. And it's like, yo, like y'all can turn up with him. He's not paid entertainment
this isn't
here.
TV. We don't have to wait for the
Because this is,
to get
I
here.
think I didn't really recognize it at the time, because I think we kind of came up during a time when all these apps were new, and it was like people just were kind of like, we didn't have all of this like, oh, here's a time limit on your apps because they have this infinite scroll algorithm that will ruin your mental health. So we didn't really know that back then. But like, especially with Snapchat, like, bro, I for sure am on thousands of people's
He just start
Snapchat.
dancing. It's like, oh, let me look
Just
at Andre dance.
lights all around me. And I'm like, why aren't people in this with me? This is pre-COVID now. I know we in COVID times and monkeypox times and et cetera times, because I think they also said there's a polio outbreak in New York. But look.
Yeah.
And a mega flood coming to
And like a bunch of diseases that are being uncovered because of global warming.
Global warming, melting the ice and stuff. Yeah, that's probably a whole nother. We can probably do a whole nother just hour on that. But what I would notice is I'm like, okay, the 10 seconds would go off. Everybody would start looking at their phone, and then I'm not a person no more. Like I'm not like nobody would be like, hey, what's your name? You're really lit. Like I would love to meet you. And outside of this environment, maybe let's play Uno or something. Like, because me and Kyler, we try to especially tell people like on a day-to-day basis, I be chilling. My fun to me, and every day on my birthday, like Kyler knows this too. I don't go to the club. I don't go to no bar. I don't go out. I'm trying to be in. I'm trying to be in somebody's backyard. I'm trying to be in my backyard with a grill or frying some fish. We controlling the music. We have alcohol here. We got weed here. Like we don't have like too much happening. We have abundance for sure, but like it's starting in the daytime. It ends. Everybody can go home and get a good night's sleep for their weekend. That's how I like my birthdays and stuff to go. But it just started. It's a process that just started recently because I realized how much energy was just being drained away from me in social and big group interactions with people that people weren't putting back into me once all this was over. Like, so once the town hall's over or once the, all of that stuff's over, nobody's like, dang, Andre, like, have you ate today? Like, I cooked some food, or like, let's go here and eat some food, or like checking back in on me. Like, dang, bro, like you hydrated, man. It seemed like you was kind of real animated up there talking. You know what I'm saying? And then when I started realizing more and more, there were people that were doing that, right? So that's Kyler. You know what I'm saying? That's a few other people that was doing that. And so then I just directed my energy towards having mutualism with them. How can I have mutualism with them and not focus so much on what other people ain't doing? Because then now it's draining my mental energy along with my physical energy, and spiritual energy at that too. And so I think from there it just led me to really have a better analysis of what my role is in. You know what I'm saying? Because we was talking about with the pigs, with what behaviors they were doing that was leading to being susceptible to the parasitic energy, right? And I think like in certain scenarios, like that's okay. Like if there's, because I work in education, and so if there's students that are trying to learn about higher ed or learn about college and stuff, I need to tap in for that type of energy because yes, that's why they're here. That's why they're asking me. I need to be here for that. So that's, again, it's not all bad, but it's just that it can't be a constant aspect because again, over time, I won't have nothing left for me at the end of the day. So now what that's led to is me having more time to like, I make music, I have a garden, and I feel like for right now, it's something that's definitely helping me put my energy in a lot of different baskets, and then also show up for the people that love me and give love back and forth.
Yeah,
Brought up
I love that.
You brought up a point that I meant to bring up earlier, but I really liked when you were talking about being like the nuclear reactor, and how, you were the fuel, right? Everybody thought you were the gas, and how nobody really realizes, people think, because people aren't completely unaware of when they're being parasitic, right? I think everybody kind of has a general meter, and they're like, I might be asking too much, but it's really hard to stop once you've identified that this is the person that has that resource for you. You know what I mean? Especially people who already deal with like codependency issues and things like that. But the part that I thought was really significant that you said was about, when you're the gas, when you're the fuel, and everybody knows that you are the thing that is the catalyst, right? You make it move. People think that they are refueling you and filling up the gas for you, but they're not filling up the gas tank. They're just, or no, they are filling up the gas tank, but it's not necessarily switching roles with you, if that makes sense. You're still the gas. You're just being filled up externally. You know what I mean? And something that I notice a lot of the time, especially with me, is that I will kind of be in that role where it's like like, oh, you're the one that articulates the points that we all have to say, right? That's something that people tell me all the time, especially in friends. You have the words, you have the words, you know how to say it in a way that I couldn't put the words together. So can you just keep saying it? We're just going to push you to the front of the group. So, you know what I mean? And it's hard because people, when they recognize that and they recognize that you are that person and it might be a little bit unfair, their go-to is to try to build you back up in that moment. Like, oh, I really appreciate you. Oh, you're so good. You're so smart. You're so articulate. Do you need some gas money? Do you need some whatever it is? And I'm like, no, I really just want you to drive the boat. You know what I mean? I'm tired of being a voice for the voiceless. I want to just pass the mic. Like, I just want somebody else to do it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard, and it's, again, as a Black woman, it's, especially as a mother, it's one of those things that I think people don't really understand until you make them feel bad about it, and then it becomes another thing. But it's like, when I first became a parent, obviously I didn't know what I was doing because I had just had a baby and I'd never had a baby before. So, and I don't remember what I was talking about or who I was even talking to about it, but it was like, I was just frustrated and confused about something in regards to taking care of a baby, right? And I felt like no one was really listening to me in like to what I needed in that moment. They were just like, oh, but you're such a good mother. You're a great mother. And it's like, yeah, I didn't doubt that in this moment. I really am just saying that I have a need that's not being met. You know what I mean? And in people who are naturally parasitic, in their minds, they're like, well, if I just say thank you and show my gratitude, then it's fixed. It's good. You know what I mean? And that's something I even struggle with sometimes, where it's like, I know I'm taking too much from you, but I'm just going to keep saying thank you and I'm sorry and be really apologetic about it, and maybe it'll make it okay. But it doesn't. You know what I mean? You're still taking, you're still absorbing and consuming in a way that's not always healthy for the other person.
But something that goes with that is like I guess the larger macro issue is like individualism and communalism, and just like with how communities aren't like actually in the same way, I would say, back when, before colonization and stuff, in a lot of societies, like it was expected that the entire community come around to help raise the child. Like every person had a role that day, you know what I'm saying? Every person had a trade-off, and it wasn't expected that a child was only the responsibility of that one single person's parent, but it's a responsibility of the village. Like everybody had a responsibility for that child. And it tended to be that people could have more energy to come back to themselves and resume their roles in the society Like if you're a person that's a pottery, or you make the pots for the village, or you're the person that goes and gets the water for the village, like people need you to do that. So they will step up and be like, okay, well, we gonna wash the child while you going to the river or something. So and we're gonna make sure they're safe. And you can actually trust in them that they are gonna make sure that everybody's safe, because
Right.
they have a responsibility. Because if the kid end up not being safe, now we don't got water for the whole village. So like once they started to like take us away from that, and you know, controversial, unpopular opinion, but we should have thought a little bit more about integration, my opinion only, but I ain't gonna tell everybody. I ain't don't get too mad at me, but we should have thought a little bit more about that before we just jumped, because I think we jumped the gun a little bit.
We went too far a little bit.
I think we jumped it a little, because if you like, because when my grandma talks about, because she grew up in the South, like segregated South and stuff like that, she talked about the horrors of it. She talked about how, in just real plain ways, like it was terrible. You know what I'm saying? But for my grandma in 2022 to say it's worse now,
Eesh.
Yeah.
that hit me. That hit me deep.
That hurt my feelings, actually.
I know. I had
She,
to take a second for that one.
cause I'm talking to her and she's like, well, at least we had each other.
Yeah, like we can't even do that now.
We can't even come together now. So we dealing with similar issues that really ain't got no movement. But now we all separated and all far apart, and don't nobody talk, and don't nobody have no communalism. And so just also like just as we close, and just adding that as a piece of our, yes, we have that individual responsibility of like, yeah, like how can we set those boundaries, and we need to all do that for sure. I also think like there is a responsibility to like commune, so that these things aren't just so much of an individual journey and something that you have to come up with all by yourself. Because that's how whiteness and white supremacy teach us to solve problems. It's like you have to be the expert and you gotta, you know, do it for yourself or it will never happen. You're responsible for your own happiness. And it's like,
You're responsible for yours, and then you're responsible for everyone around you's happiness as well.
right. And it just leads to people feeling like jaded on one end, because it's like, well, if I'm responsible for it, but I still got bills that ain't got nothing to do with me, I still gotta drive and deal with cars on the road. Like it seems like a lot of things that deal with other people that ain't just on me. And so just also for folks to think about that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, just another thing about, you know, like parasitic relationships in that regard, you know, I think one of the things that is important about like the village aspect is, you know, I don't think people necessarily don't want to be part of a village, you know. I think we all are, I'm making a generalization, but I think we generally want that, right? Like we all want to operate in those systems, but it's really hard when you can't, and you said it earlier, you can't really trust them all the time. You know, it's like, and that's how parasitism comes into play, I think, because you know, in the types of societies we have now, everybody has really specialized roles. You know, it's like you are this guy, you are that guy, you do this, you do that, right? And then when it comes down to somebody needing support, you know, you're like, okay, well, I can't come to you for this because that's not your specialized role, you know, so I have to do it all by myself. And even if you want to help me, I can't really trust that you can or will, because you don't know. How do I know that you know what you're doing? You know what I mean? And that becomes something I think that pops up in parasitic relationships, because there's always this air of, oh, well, why can't you do it for me? Because I do the same for you. And it's like, yeah, even if you could do the same for me, I can't really trust you to do the same, because when have you ever done that? You know what I mean? Like, how do I, that's not your role in society. You know what I mean? So I think that's also something that we lost with integration, is the fact that, you know, everybody became more isolated, more specialized, and we have less people who are just generally village members, you know? We have less people who want to be it. And it's one of those things where it's like, if you already know that that's not your role, you've already turned it off in your head. It's not my job. I'm not even going to think about it. I'm not going to spend, you know, I'm not going to exert the emotional labor required to solve those problems, because they're not my problems, you know? they're that person's problems and they're very special to that person. And that's how people get isolated and marooned essentially, and just forced to deal with shit on their own, I think. So I think that's another thing that probably needs to be addressed in our communities.
I think we've given out way too much free knowledge on this podcast. I think we've dropped quite a bit of gems throughout this conversation and just taking it all in and just really enjoying the dialogue. But they're gonna have to start subscribing to the podcast if we're giving out this many gems in one episode, unfortunately. But I do want to kind of start to close us out and transition. First things first, before we go fully into the closing, as y'all know from last episode, we came up with this segment called the Cool Bean segment, Bean standing for Black entrepreneurs and artists needing spotlight. So this is a segment each episode where we highlight a Black business, a Black entrepreneur, a Black artist. We kind of be going off the cuffs for this one, but Joy, did you have one that you wanted to highlight, or are you still looking it up?
Ooh, I am pulling my Instagram up as we speak. Just give me like 5 seconds. But I know, actually, let me look on Twitter. Can you come back to me in like 15 seconds? Yeah,
I got you. I'm a professional at this. I could talk while I can stall for a living. But as we have a Black artist I guess all of us are Black artists on this podcast, actually. But I did want to specifically highlight, because Joy, you mentioned the word catalyst, and immediately when you said it, I wanted to throw a shameless plug because it's our podcast for Andre 1K, the artist. Why don't you talk to our listeners a little bit about Catalyst and what that means for you?
Yeah, so I learned about it in chemistry class, and I mean, honestly, I feel like everybody did, but maybe it was just me that remembered. But I just always was interested in how like there are certain catalysts to chemical reactions that are needed to make it go. You know what I'm saying? And I think when I made that mixtape, the Catalyst mixtape, the thing that I was thinking about was how in music there wasn't music that sounded like music that I like listening to that also had any type of consciousness. And I think it kind of got to a point where consciousness was starting to get corny because people were kind of bigging up people as individuals to say like this person is quote unquote conscious and everything they're saying is conscious, but then belittling other artists that maybe weren't saying it in a respectable way or maybe weren't saying it in a way that was palatable, but also show a lot of consciousness in what they're saying, and they're speaking to the issues of what's going on, but maybe they're not saying it in a way that's like quote unquote respectable or something like that. And so I wanted to like, create that mixtape to just show that I have a lot of like contradictions and a lot of parts of myself that makes me human, and show that I'm imperfect, but that doesn't mean we can't imperfectly digest music that might have something to say, might have something to educate us on, and we can still turn up to it. Like we can still put this on, because I think people forget that when the Black Panther Party was at its like heyday, they had songs, bro.
Yeah.
They had songs. They was getting turned. It wasn't just this like, and y'all know what I'm talking about. The people that be trying to play the super conscious songs at the club. Like, come on now. Like, y'all know we didn't come for that.
I'm here to shake my ass and get drunk. Like,
that's what I'm saying. And it's like, that doesn't mean,
okay.
Yeah, that doesn't mean that it has to be devoid of actually like being cool or being like relevant, or devoid of like, oh, well, that's related to the mainstream, so that's not what consciousness is. And I just wanted to show a different take on consciousness that showed me having a chance to start the conversation and just show something different to my ears and to other people's ears that I know, so that when they got and they got time in their car, they just come on the car, the beat is knocking, but at the same time, there's some stuff in this song that they can like look up later and maybe look into and learn about. You know what I'm saying? Because I think that was what was devoid, is just that education piece. And I'm not saying I'm an expert at all. Like I'm just feel like I'm a catalyst to the process. Like I'm a part of it, but there still has to be the reactants and products to a chemical reaction, and that's where we all come together. But I think the thing that I'm really good at is being that catalyst to just starting those conversations. So like, especially when it just comes to, you know, taking a deeper analysis of what our day-to-day life is, and the things that people try to highlight as good. And I'm like, bruh, it's not cool to be disparaging other people for profits. Like, it don't matter if this is like music, it don't matter if it's for billionaires. And, you know, I think that's something that I just tried to do with that mixtape. And it was the first thing that I made too. Like, it was the first like mixtape that I made. So I also had that in acknowledgement for the album. It was just like, hey, like, I'm just trying this, and I don't need this to get me rich. I'm not making music to get rich or make music to, you know, become famous or something like that. I just want people to hear it and have an analysis and just think for a second when they listen to the music, and maybe that'll inspire the next person. Because that's all I feel like I really care about is like, oh, like, how can I inspire somebody else to be themselves in their song and not have to feel like they have to adhere to industry standards or TikTok standards in order to create? Because I think creating is the solution itself. Yeah. Like, it doesn't have to have an end goal. Like, people, oh, you rap, where your chain at? Like, I think Vince Staples was talking about that. You rap, where your Bentley at? Bruh, people just need to be making music. Yeah, like, people need to just make music, and people need to just do that regardless of what your occupation is that you pay the bills with. You should just be creating, everyone. Yeah. Like, and that's the solution, is to be the antithesis to consumption is creating. And so that's where Catalyst came from.
That was a beautiful ISO. I'm gonna have to ask you to plug your music though. Like, I love to soliloquy. Like, I need you to tell them where they can find it.
They can find it on all platforms. Andre 1K, Catalyst. I also have Throwing Bombs. That's another mixtape I dropped in the same year. Got a lot of singles out with Apple Music, Spotify, Tidal, hell, YouTube. What else is there? Anything that you would listen to as a musical platform, my music is on there. Search Andre 1K and you'll find it. Nice. And let me know what you think. My DMs are open for all anything related to that. My DMs is open. Just hit me up and let me know what you like about it. You know what I'm saying? And what if it made you think? It made you think.
I love that so much. You're the first person I've ever asked to plug something that didn't even mention where you can find it, but you went into this beautiful monologue that set it up perfectly. But I gotta remind you that you don't always gotta be humble. I know you're not making it for the money, but you can still plug yourself. Yeah, talk your shit. Joy, did you find your plug?
I did. So it's not necessarily a business, but a friend of mine, Hannah, she's one of my friends from the Mom Twitterverse, but she is kind of a blogger and she cooks. So I'll give you her regular Twitter, and then I'll give you her Twitter that she has specifically for her meals. But she cooks, she's a stay-at-home mom, and she's cooking all the time. She has 3 boys. This girl is my hero. Our first 2 kids are very similar in age, and then she has a newborn, and she's still posting her content every day, doing what she's doing, and that shit is inspiring. So her Twitter is #1. It's at #1 Hannah Mooney. That's her name, HANNA, and then Mooney, MOONEY, and then there's a #1 at the front. And then her cooking Twitter is Hannah Eating, so HANNA, and then the word eating, EATING. Her recipes are super dope. Her food looks amazing. Constantly has me in the gym trying to figure out not the literal gym, but you know what I mean, shooting in the gym, trying to figure out how I can get better in the kitchen, because that shit is inspiring. But she's very sweet. She's very sweet. And I just really want her to get more recognition for her content, because she deserves it a whole lot. So
awesome. Well, our Nat Nonsense listeners, make sure y'all follow up both Twitter pages and show some love. Joy, it's been a pleasure having you on Natural Nonsense. Congratulations on your first ever podcast appearance. First of many, I would say. Joy is going to be a friend of the podcast. This won't be the last episode that Joy's on. We definitely going to get into another episode called parental behavior at some point, because there are some gems dropped in here about being a parent, and also like calling on people to put some respect on what being a stay-at-home mom means. Like, I feel like there's this outdated connotation that you're just staying at home being a mom. Like, nah, that's more than a full-time job.
Watching TV all day. We're in here. Like I said, we're in here shooting in the gym. It's hard work for sure. But yeah, thank you guys for having me. This was really fun. I had no idea what to expect, but I was pleasantly surprised. I hope I didn't talk you guys' heads off. I tend to ramble a little bit.
Nah.
But
Nah, that's what this is for.
yeah, I mean, yeah, y'all are definitely giving me podcast ideas though. I've been thinking about it for a while. I just don't know what I would talk about consistently, you know. But
Well, you have plenty of knowledge and experience to talk about. Like, you're definitely an inspiration. Only 28 years old, like emphasizing that Black don't crack and Black got a lot of room to grow. Like, just you really in your bag, you and your Duffy, and we love to see it.
thank you, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm figuring it out. Like I said, you might hear from me in 2 weeks, and I might be doing a completely different thing on a completely different path, but I think the one thing that I take away is that I'm always learning new things and I'm always trying to be the best at all the things that I'm doing. You know, I'm an Ash Ketchum to the truest extent of the definition, you know, I just want to be the best like no one ever was. And I live by that. Truly, I do, you know.
One of the most inspirational theme songs of all time. Tell the folks where they can find you one more time, though, just to make sure that people can tap in.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at @microsama_. That's MICROSAMA_. I think it is the same for Instagram. And then you can also, I'm not really consistent on TikTok, but I am on TikTok at micro.sama. Yeah, I'm all around. So just hit me up.
Yeah, hit her up, follow her before she changed her Twitter handle to something with primates.
Yeah, it's coming. It might happen, but I'll make sure everybody knows where to find me in the meantime.
Awesome. Well, thank everybody for tuning in to this episode of Natural Nonsense. It's been a pleasure. Hopefully y'all looked up a bunch of words. Like, I probably got a list going that I need to hit the dictionary.com for. Next couple episodes of Natural Nonsense, we get into the thick of things. We're going to be talking about poli-sci. We're going to talk about cog-sci and how all that relates to the animal kingdom. So if y'all have questions about Andre's specialty in political science or mine in cognitive science, send it to us either on Instagram or Twitter at NatNonsensePod. Send us a voice message using a link in our bio. And yeah, we'll catch y'all next episode.
Peace.